Hello. In this presentation, we will be talking to you about Lithalonica, a dialect of ancient Greek. We being myself, Daniel Swanson, Percival the Mammoth, and our colleagues who could not be present with us, Lamadata Safatova and the Ghost of Christmas Procrastinated. As a bit of background, the Lithalonica is spoken by a group of Athenian hoplites who were present at the final battle of the Second Zathagon incursion, assisting the Pangolins. An excess of wild magic in that event transformed them into hydrological spirits and transported them to an otherwise uninhabited planet for several thousand years. Upon their return and rehumanization, we were able to interview them and examine some of the changes in their speech. The changes we had the most success in documenting were some of the sound changes, particularly the transformations of their vowel system. To the best of our ability to reconstruct ancient Greek, the pronunciations of the vowels have not changed substantially, but the phonological structure and uses of them have changed considerably. So, to begin with, the non-high vowels here we have non-high vowels become low and unrounded when at we have abused the notation slightly. The hash sign in the next several rules we're presenting is not actually a word boundary, it is a clause boundary. We had a great deal of fun actually figuring out that this was the case. There were some very strange patterns otherwise. But anyway, we have a class of sounds that we are denoting M. X here is any phoneme. Utterance final preceded by M, utterance initial preceding M, between two instances of M, preceding M followed by a number of phonemes which is a multiple of 5, or preceded by a number of phonemes which is 3 more than a multiple of 5, and then an instance of M. What is M, you may ask? M is this monstrosity. It is a low unrounded vowel, an anterior coronal fricative, a labial consonant that is either a voiced sonorant or a voiceless obstruent, or a voiceless velar consonant or a lateral consonant. And this is the first rule. There is also one here's another one that changes non-high vowels. This time it makes them mid-front vowels, mid-front unrounded vowels. These environments are essentially the same, except we have changed to a different class of sounds. This class is similarly fun. We have any mid-front vowel, any non-coronal fricative, any non-strident fricative, any coronal obstruent, and any voiced labial obstruent. And this is a set of 3. These are again the same environments, but with I, and here the vowel becomes a mid-back rounded vowel. I can be any round vowel, any high vowel, any non-lateral coronal sonorant, any voiced velar obstruent, or any non-velar affricate or fricative. Anyway, we also found we also now present a sampling of changes to the consonants. First, we have non-coronal obstruents become voiced between two sounds which are of classes I or S, or essentially which are not of class M, since I, S, and M do in fact cover all of the sounds. If there is a multiple of 5 preceding them, and then the next sound is not M, or there's a multiple of 5, if there's 3 more than a multiple of 5, and then a non-M preceding them. And the next two have the same environment, exactly the same in this case. Here, a voiceless, non-strident coronal fricative becomes a stop in this environment, and any nasal consonant becomes coronal. And there are also various instances of metathesis. We will note two. One is that here we have kat becomes tak if the number of phonemes preceding it in the clause is a multiple of 5. And yes, we're confident this is the best analysis. And again, nat becomes nta, either utterance finally, or if the number of phonemes preceding it in the clause is 2 more than a multiple of 5. And now, the syntactic changes. There was a diachronic syntactician in our project. He descended into madness, and we were not able to replace him. So rather than give you a structured analysis, we are just going to give you a handful of examples of sentences in Attic Greek and Lithalonica and comment on some of the interesting changes. First, we have this one, the original katapantas nomus petomenu gignoskomenus, which in Lithalonica, in pragmatically neutral form, takapontes betononu namus gignoskamanus. This means according to all known laws of flying. This first instance is fairly benign. We have merely moved the genitive before the noun, which might lead one to suspect that we are just developing a preference for more head final, but we shall see. It gets much worse. Here, melita ukestin dunate petestai, a bee is not able to fly. Duntao ukmalita petestai ostin. Here, the phrase able to fly has been split apart. This is not too out of the ordinary in Greek in poetic texts, but this is specifically the most neutral form of the sentence that we were able to elicit. Like we have split the phrase apart. And next, tamen patera autu microtera esin. On the one hand, its wings are too small. Utu oisin nigrotera patera monte. Here we note an interesting trend. At the beginning of it, what we'll see is a rather interesting trend of the determiner of a noun frequently moves from before the noun to 2 places after the noun. We have precedent in Greek for things being over a word. For example, this men in introducing the first half of a contrast typically comes as the second word in the clause, here as quite frequently splitting a noun phrase. But here we have a noun phrase where we will see later, it does not seem to matter what the other word is. It is in fact the noun phrase itself that is pushing for the splitting. Additionally, we have this possessor, which has the predicate and the copula between it and the thing it is possessing. Going on, e oste, este e, in order that. This we were given as somewhat of a fixed phrase to begin with, and now it has switched order for some reason. Airein to soma micron pion autu apoteskes, to lift its fat little body from the ground, which becomes bion autu oiroin geste te sema apa nigron. Here, as noted, the determiner for ges, ground, is 2 words later. The determiner for sema, body, is before it, where it would be expected in Attic Greek. However, if we had this sequence here of a determiner, noun, where one determiner agrees with the noun and one does not, we would expect to read this as this second determiner as indicating an elided noun phrase, and thus this would probably be her body. But in fact, this determiner goes with ges and is from the ground. It is also somewhat amusing to note that pion, fat, has now, at least in some contexts, become a homophone of bion, life. He de melita petetai. On the other hand, the bee flies. De malitai petete ho. Once again, the noun phrase has been split with the determiner moving after the noun and putting one word in between. Also, note that on the previous a few sentences ago, we had men, which was originally in second position and then moved near the end of the clause. Here we have de, which was originally in second position and has moved towards the beginning of the clause. Next, melitai gar u frontizone. Has become frontizuno gor nalitoi u. Here there is less of weirdness to note, since none of the phrases have more than one word to begin with. Though it is interesting that the negation is now further away from the verb than the nominal argument. And as our final example, hon hoi anthropoi dokeusin adunatos enai, what humans think is impossible. They come edunotes hon onthroboi degeusin hoi oinoi, again, with the determiners moving afterwards. And again, and interestingly, the relative pronoun no longer marks boundary of the clause. And also, here we have a matrix verb that is between edunontes and oinoin, the two parts of the dependent clause. We were, as you might imagine, extremely confused by all of these changes. And then it chanced to be that we learned about the Lithalonica orthography. In fact, as hydrological spirits, it is actually extremely difficult for them to remain in a fixed location for a long enough continuous time to actually articulate anything by moving air. And thus, instead, they took to communicating by constructing geological formations, where each letter of the Greek alphabet was replaced by a type of rock. Thus, alpha will be represented by a layer of serpentine, beta will be represented by a layer of sandstone, gamma will be represented by a layer of granite, and so on. And in fact, whether these types of rock are metamorphic, sedimentary, or igneous precisely corresponds to the three classes of sounds we had in our phonological rules earlier. For as it turns out, the way that they construct these formations is that they build columns 5 layers high, read from top to bottom, and then they read the row of columns from left to right. And most of the phonological changes in the language have been driven by the fact that placing a metamorphic rock on top of a sedimentary rock without turning the sedimentary rock into another metamorphic rock is extremely difficult, both and time-consuming, and thus they would rather avoid having metamorphic rocks on top of piles. And thus, if we take our first 3 rules, manipulate changing non-high vowels, and we introduce a notation for column boundary, which here we have denoted with a $sign, we can say that actually a non-high vowel will assimilate in rock type to the surround if the sounds on either side of it are the same rock type, or if it is at a column boundary and the one sound it borders is of that type. The other rules given admit similar simplifications. As for the syntax, we re-examined the situation and discovered that what the speakers seem to be doing is that they have split their sentences into some notion approximating clause boundaries, and within each clausal unit, they have reordered the words. They reorder the words however they wish in order to minimize the number of difficult transitions between rock types, both vertically and horizontally, and that is why phrases are so often split in such strange ways, in that the syntax of Lithalonica now does not care about subclausal phrase structure at all. In conclusion, if you are documenting a new language, it may be worthwhile to investigate whether the speakers of this language have, at any point in the near past, changed their manner of articulation, such as from tectonics to vocal articulators, or between vocal articulators and sign language, or some other such transition. Additionally, given the experience of our diachronic syntactician, it may be reasonable for IRB review boards to examine the data analysis stage of a project as well, especially if there's been a finding that there is mixed modality in the history of the language. And finally, we will make sure to do that next time. Please don't tell the IRB that we forgot. Anyway, thanks for listening.